Hello, this is the information video for English for Year 10. Now, for those of you who don't know already, in English at GCSE level there are two GCSEs, there's English language and English literature, both of which all students sit. So I'm just going to go through firstly what the end point is, for where we're going, so what the exams look like and the skills that they're testing, and then I'll talk about how we're going to get there, sort of what the plan is over the next 2 years, and then talk a little bit about what you can be doing at home to support your students. So first of all, English language is made up of 2 exams, both sat at the end of year 11 in the exam period. They are both an hour and 45. They're both worth 80 marks, and it just adds up to being a mark out of 160, and then the grade comes from that. Paper 1 is called Explorations in Creative Reading and Writing. It's about reading a piece of fiction. So they get given one piece of fiction, an extract from the beginning of a novel or a short story that they've never read before. It's about a page and a bit, normally a page and a quarter, and then they get asked 4 questions about it. And the questions get sort of progressively harder and test different skills, more advanced skills as they go through. So question 1 is very simple. 2 and 3 are sort of both analysis, but question 2 is language, which more students are used to, and question 3 is structure. And then question 4 is sort of the biggest question of that section of the paper, which is an evaluation task where the student has to explore whether there's evidence to agree or disagree with a particular statement about that extract. And then section B is writing. So for both of the language exams, section B is a writing task. And in paper 1, it is writing a piece of fiction. Get a choice of 2 tasks. One will give you an image. Both of them will either be descriptive or narrative. So often it is one descriptive and one narrative option, but actually sometimes that is not the case because they like to keep us on our toes with the structure that they use. And that section B, question 5, is worth 40 marks, so it's half of the paper. What we tend to advise, what we tend to say is that students spend an hour on section A and then 45 minutes on section B. And then paper 2 is a very, very similar structure, but it's more based on non-fiction. And you have 2 pieces to read. So you get 2 pieces of non-fiction. They're normally shorter than the non-fiction, than the fiction piece from paper 1, but paper 2, section A, they get 2 pieces of non-fiction to read, and one of those will be from the 19th century. So sort of a more modern one and an older one. And the focus of the paper is comparing how writers present their perspectives on particular things. So once again, same structure where you get the reading and then 4 questions, and they sort of get progressively harder as you go through. So you start with a simple thing, and then it ends with a 16-mark question, which is a comparison of how a particular viewpoint is presented across the 2 pieces of non-fiction writing that you've read. And then section B is write a piece of non-fiction. You don't get a choice of task. You get given a statement about a subject that's normally linked in some way to the 2 pieces of non-fiction from the reading section. And then you get asked to either agree or disagree with it, and it will normally specify what type of text to write. So it will be a letter to someone, or a speech, or an article, and then that gives you the audience as well. So once again, that's section B, that's worth 40 marks. Section A is worth 40 marks altogether. But again, we say spend an hour on section A and 45 minutes on section B to allow for the reading time. So that's what the language exams look like at the end of year 11. So the literature exams, again, it is 2 papers. but it's slightly different formats because in English literature, the main business of what we're doing is essay writing. So paper one is about Shakespeare in the 19th century novel. There are two sections. First one is Shakespeare, second one is the 19th century novel. They're both worth 30 marks, but for section A, there are 4 additional marks for the quality of written communication. And that comes up in paper 2 as well. Across the 2 papers, there are 8 marks for quality of written communication. So that's your what used to be called SPAG, spelling, punctuation, and grammar. Other than that, the 2 questions are very, very similar. You get given an extract from the text that you have studied, you get asked a question, and you write an essay answering that question. And you need to refer to the extract and the rest of the text. You need to link it into the rest of the text. Then paper 2 is, paper 1, that is also an hour and 45 minutes, and we say that you spend sort of roughly 55 minutes on section A and 50 minutes on section B, or sort of actually roughly sort of 50-50%. So paper 2 is modern texts and poetry. It is made up of 3 sections. This is the longest of the English exams. It might even be the longest of the GCSE exams, where it is 2 hours and 15 minutes long. Section A is about the modern text, so you get given a choice between 2 essay questions. You don't get an extract in this one, and you write an essay answering that essay question. Again, in this question, there are 4 marks available for quality of written communication, so that's 34 marks rather than just the 30. Section B is on anthology poetry, so students will have studied 15 poems from a collection relating to power and conflict, and they get given one poem and they write an essay comparing that poem with another poem that they have to recall from their memory. And then section C is unseen poetry, where they're given a poem. It's in 2 sections. They're given a poem and they're asked to write a really short essay about that poem, presentation of a theme in that poem, and then they're given a second poem for the last question, which is 8 marks, where they're asked to compare how those 2 poems present the same idea. So that's the literature exams. Broadly, the skills, it's all about knowing a text, knowing the history of the text, and knowing how to write an essay, an exploratory analytical essay about it. So how we get there over the next 2 years, this is what we're going to be doing. In year 10, we start off, and have started already, with the modern text. So that means that your child is currently studying either an inspector course, that's the majority of classes, or one class is studying Animal Farm, or maybe 2 classes, I think, are studying Animal Farm, and one is studying Lord of the Flies. Then we will move on from that to Shakespeare, and we read Macbeth. And then throughout all of that, mixed in between those things, normally studied in pairs, comparative pairs, we will study the majority of the poetry from that collection. And then also mixed in throughout the year, we will cover the key skills for all of the language papers, for both of the language papers. And then in year 11, we start off again with the literature texts. We start with a 19th century novel, so either A Christmas Carol or Jekyll and Hyde. And then the remaining poetry we will finish off as well. And then from then on, normally from Christmas on, it's exam practice. We've sort of delivered the content, and then it's exam practice. And then for language as well in year 11, the key skills have been delivered and taught. So it's about practicing those key skills, because that is the main way to do well in the language exam. In terms of how you can support your child, one is help them to do practice. When we're setting practice essays, when we're setting practice papers, when they go home to you with them, if you make space, time available for them to do that, help them if you can, if you're able to, or you're more than welcome to talk to your child's teacher and ask sort of how you can support them and help them. Encourage them to use Seneca. That's what we set most of our Key Stage 4 homework through. It's an online app which teaches and then tests about particular things. We'll be setting tasks out on that regularly, so encourage them to use it, ask them how they're doing with it, all that sort of thing. Get them reading as much as possible. Any reading is good reading, so if they have magazines about a particular interest, or it's really good for them to read newspapers, that sort of thing. Obviously, with those literature texts, it's really good for them to be reading and rereading those when they're being studied, or even when they're not studying them, to keep them in their minds. And in terms of other helpful resources, I'm a big fan of a chap on YouTube called Mr. Bruff, who does videos breaking down exams and sort of breaking down texts and revising them and stuff. I really recommend, if you would like to buy revision guides, I recommend those made by CGP. They're really good. But then Collins as well do a series called Snap Revision that are smaller, they're cheaper, but they're just as good. They've got some really good helpful stuff in there. Just make sure that you're buying it for the AQA exam board, because you don't want to be getting the wrong information about the exams. And also, on the subject of the AQA website has plenty of great information as well. You can download the specification, you can download past papers from there, and mark schemes and guides to how to do well in them. So that is all there, all available. If anyone would like to ask me further questions, you're welcome to. My email address is available on the school website. I am Mr. Dodd, the head of English, and that is all the information about English in Year 10. Thank you very much.